Facebook friends out there, and good morning. We're coming to you live from Church Without Borders in the Ed Maris Plaza off Soda Road. That's right behind the J.S. Johnson building. And so good morning, and welcome to Church Without Borders. I am the pastor and evangelist Emily also sends out greetings, as well as the audience. This morning we want to talk about maturity for marriage. Maturity for marriage. And we are now in the 10th month of dealing with marriage. And I think I'm going to sort of wind it down this month and go on to something else. So this morning we're looking at maturity in marriage. People of courtship age are interested in knowing whether there is a best age for marriage. Is there a best age for marriage? Many variables must be taken into consideration. Chronological age is but one of the related factors that cannot be considered independently in assessing readiness for marriage. To illustrate, college-educated people seem to have happier marriages than non-college educated people. Let me repeat that. According to this study, college-educated people seem to have happier marriages than non-college educated people. If divorce rates of college and non-college people are taken as a measure, and college graduates marry at a later age than non-college graduates, is it the age at marriage or the college experience that results in happier marriages among college graduates? Let me repeat that question. Is it the age at marriage or the college experience that results in happier marriages among college graduates? Or are there selective factors that may differentiate college and non-college people and that also affect marital success? And so the question of what age is best emerges as less to the point than the question of what level of maturity is necessary before one is old enough to marry. What level of maturity is necessary? That is the question. What level of maturity is necessary before one is old enough to marry? Let's look at emotional maturity. Emotional maturity. A factor of greatest importance is the success or failure of any marriage is the emotional maturity of the partners. The emotional maturity of the partners. Emotional maturity can be defined as the level of development of one's ability to see oneself and others objectively. Emotional maturity can be defined as the level of development of one's ability to see oneself and others objectively, to be able to discriminate between facts and feelings, and to act on facts rather than on feelings. That's what we talk about, emotional maturity. And so the child of 10 is not expected to be emotionally mature. He is developing satisfactorily if he is as mature as other normal children of his age. If he is as mature as other normal children of his age. Get that now. Get that. And so, at each stage of life, a certain degree of maturity is necessary if one is to function adequately at that stage. And so it means then that children or people ought to be developing as they grow older. Each year after year, a child or a person is to mature chronologically. and not stay at one spot, one point in their lives, Each stage of life, a certain degree of maturity is necessary. And so if you don't see that stage, if you don't see that growth each year in that person's life, then something is seriously wrong with that person psychologically. Each stage of life, a certain degree of maturity is necessary if one is to function adequately at that stage. And so problems arise when the emotional growth of people is arrested at immature stages. Problems arise when the emotional growth of people is stopped then at immature stages. In other words, they cease growing. They cease maturing. A person could be 30, 40, 50, and still acting the way they were acting when they were 16. And when you find that in a person, that's a problem. That's a problem. A person is to mature and grow each year more than they did the year before. Problems arise when the emotional growth of people is ceased or is stopped at immature stages. They cease growing. They cease maturing. They are still a child. They are still a big girl. They are still a big boy. And even though they are married, but they're still children in their minds. They are still children in their attitudes and in their thinking. Especially are problems likely to be acute if one or both partners in a marriage have not achieved a satisfactory level of maturity. That's problems. That's problems. That's a problem. Especially are problems likely to be acute. The problem is serious then if one or both partners in a marriage have not achieved a satisfactory level of maturity. It's bad when one partner have not achieved a certain level of maturity, but when you have both partners, in that same position, that is a serious problem. A serious problem. When both partners in the marriage have not achieved a satisfactory level of maturity. And so you see, it's expected then of adults to mature. It's not automatic. It's not automatic that because you are getting older that you are maturing. The sad reality is, in most cases, people are not maturing the older they get. And they have no problem with it. In fact, most people are not even aware. Most people in that position is not even aware. They are not aware that they are not growing and that they are not maturing. And so the ability to use empathy is in constructive ways are characteristic of mature adults. The ability to use empathy, the ability to empathize with others, the ability to see hurt in other people, to see other people hurting and then to reach out to help them. The maturity an individual has achieved may also be measured by the degree of flexibility or adaptability with which he reacts in his relationships with other people. Very important, very important. The rigid, inflexible person, like a small child, for instance, clings to certainty and sameness and habit. And when you have an adult doing the same thing, we get problems. We get problems. When the adult is rigid, the adult is inflexible, and the adult clings to certainty and the sameness and the habit, we get a problem. It means that adult has not been growing. It means that adult has not been maturing, mentally and psychologically, socially and otherwise. Growth towards understanding and cooperation in a close relationship, such as marriage, is handicapped by this type of immaturity. You got problems. In other words, if you happen to be in a marriage where one partner is rigid and inflexible and clings to certainty and the sameness and habit, you get a problem. You have a problem if you have a married marriage partner in that state of mind. Growth towards understanding and cooperation in a close relationship such as marriage is handicapped by this type of immaturity. And the sad commentary is that in too many marriages you find at least one partner that is not growing. One partner is not growing. And it's a crisis when you are both in that same situation. It's a crisis when you are both in that situation. And I think that is the reason why it was stated earlier concerning college graduates. That college graduates seem to have happier marriages than non-college graduated people. Understand that? That's important. That's important. College graduated people or college educated people seem to have happier marriages than non-college educated people. Yeah? And non-college graduates marry at a later age than non-college graduates. And it's because, I guess, they are more mature, they are more rounded. You follow? They waited until they were ready for marriage before they decided to get married. That's like an objectivity. One of the most important characteristics of maturity is objectivity. One of the most important characteristics of maturity, we're talking about maturity now in marriage. One of the most important characteristics of maturity is objectivity. The ability to get outside ourselves. That's what it means to be objective. The ability to get outside ourselves and to see ourselves and our interests realistically. When we talk about objectivity, that is the ability to get outside ourselves. To look at things outside ourselves and away from us. It doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter what I like. No. To be objective, you got to get outside of yourself. Get outside of your thinking. The ability to get outside ourselves and to see ourselves and our interests realistically. That is how you be objective. That is what it means to be objective. To be able to look at things realistically and to look at external facts as separate from our feelings about them. It's nothing about us. It's not about us and how I feel. But to look at external facts as separate from our feelings about them. That is what it means to be objective. To be objective is to be able to look at external facts, to be able to look at the world, to be able to look at what's going on around you as separate from our feelings about them. That is what it means to be objective. That is what it means to be objective. Small children view most of the circumstances of their lives subjectively. It's all about me. That's the way children act and that's the way children think. They view most of the circumstances of their lives subjectively. They view the world around them subjectively. How it affects me. How it affects me. That's the way children view the world. And the sad commentary is when you have adults thinking the same way. When you have adults not having matured beyond that child stage of viewing the world around themselves, as viewing most of the circumstances of their lives subjectively, and they are self-centered. That's the way children are. Children look at the world subjectively. Children are self-centered. And like I say, the problem is when adults grow up or when people grow up and they remain in that stage. They remain at that point in their lives. They view the world and the circumstances of their lives subjectively, and they are self-centered. They are self-centered, and it's a sad thing when you encounter adults who are self-centered. Everything is about themselves. Their whole world is about them. The whole world is about them. And how they feel, and what they want and what they like and what they dislike. That's being self-centered, and that is being subjectively. That is being subjective. And so with increased maturity should come the ability to see things in their true relationships. As we mature, the more we mature, we should have the ability, or we should develop the ability to see things and to see the world in their true relationships. The ability to stand aside, as it were, and to judge events more impartially. To recognize that the world does not necessarily revolve about one's own life and experiences. No, the world is not about me. No? The world can care less about me. You know, and so without objectivity, that is the ability to see things beyond yourself, without objectivity, an individual will have distorted ideas about himself or about herself. If one cannot think objectively, that is being able to think beyond themselves, in being able to understand that the world is not about me. The world can care less about me. Huh? You met the world here, and you're going to die and leave the world here. And so the world is not about you, and the world doesn't care about you. And so without objectivity, an individual will have distorted ideas about himself or about herself, about his needs and his rights. He will fail to evaluate his own motives without objectivity, without understanding what it means to be objective in your views. He will fail to evaluate his own motives. And so few people can be completely objective. Few. Most people in the world are subjective. They only care about themselves, and what they think, and what they want, and what they like. That's being subjective, that's being self-centered, that's being selfish. And the problem is, too many people go into marriage, too many people enter into marriage with that same sort of mindset. And that's why the marriages fail. That's why there's so much turmoil, and there's so much fussing, and there's so much misunderstanding, and there's so much warring within those marriages because of the same foolishness, because of this mindset, because of this immaturity on the part of one partner or the other in a marriage. And so without objectivity, or without having the ability to be objective and to see things beyond yourself, the world doesn't revolve around me, in other words. That's what it means to be objective, to understand that the world ain't about me. The world doesn't surround me. It ain't about me. Once you understand that, and once you can relate to that, then you're beginning to understand what it means to be objective. You're beginning to understand how to be objective, and how to think of things objectively, how to relate to the world around you objectively, and how to relate to people objectively, and how to judge people objectively. Some people could only appreciate people who are nice to them. Huh? Some people could at least say something good about somebody else if that person reaches out to them and make them feel good about themselves. Then they all of a sudden they think so much of that person. That's a nice person. That's being subjective. That's being selfish. That's being self-centered. You know, that might be a mean, nasty person, but just because they reach out to you, all of a sudden he's a nice person. And so without objectivity, an individual will have distorted ideas about himself, his needs, and his rights. He will fail to evaluate his own emotions. He will fail to evaluate his own motives. because of the lack of objectivity, because of the lack of seeing the world and seeing people objectively. And that takes maturity. It takes maturity to see people and to see the world around you objectively and to be honest. You might not like a person or a person might not like you, but if they did something right, what's wrong with giving them credit? That's being objective. That's being objective. Whether he likes me or not, he did a good job. You know, he did a good job. He's not my favorite politician, but he did a good job. That's being objective. That's being objective. And I said, few people can be completely objective. Few people. Few people. We're talking this morning about maturity in marriage, or maturity for marriage. That's what we're talking about. But this applies straight across the board. This mindset, this philosophy applies straight across the board. Few people can be completely objective, but the person who is growing towards the maturity, a person who is growing towards the maturity adequate for marriage, is able, through his experiences and observations in living, to be more objective than subjective in his attitude and judgments. Let me repeat that, because I know it may over some people's heads, or most people's heads. Few people can be completely objective, but the person who is growing towards a maturity, and the operative phrase there is growing toward a maturity. The person who is growing toward a maturity adequate for marriage, growing toward a maturity adequate for marriage, is able, through his experiences and observations in living, to be more objective than subjective in his attitudes and judgments. So we gotta be able to learn from our experiences and our everyday living. Our experiences and our observations in living. And so that's really nearly true life. So we should observe and learn from our experiences as we go, and that's how we mature. We observe through our experiences and observations in living. That's how we grow, and that is how we mature. You just don't really through life, or you just don't meander through life. You learn through your experiences, and you learn from observation. You observe other people, and you observe how they speak. You observe how they act. You observe how they interact. You observe how they relate to other people. You observe how they relate, in many cases, to their mates, to their friends, to their superiors, and so on. That is how you grow, and that is how you mature, from observation, from observations. You just don't really live through life, not paying attention. And maybe that's the reason why so many of us don't grow and mature, because we don't pay attention. We don't pay attention to the right things. We don't pay attention to the things that we ought to pay attention to. And consequently, we never grow and mature. Hallelujah. And so he perceives the relative importance of events as they relate to himself and other people, and can act according to his fairly accurate perceptions. That's a person who is maturing. That's a person who is growing. He perceives the relative importance of events as they occur in his life. He perceives the relative importance of events as they relate to himself and other people, and can act according to his fairly accurate perceptions. That's an intelligent person who wants to grow and mature, and who is paying attention to his life experiences and observations in living. And he is making adjustments as he goes along in his own personal life. That's how a person grows and matures. Let's look at a realistic conception of marriage. A realistic conception of marriage. The mature person is able to see marriage for what it is. A mature person. A mature person is able to see marriage for what it is. This morning again we are talking about maturity for marriage. Marriage is not for everybody. I'm telling you right now. Marriage is not for everybody because one has to be mature to enter into marriage and to have a successful marriage. One has to be mature. He knows that marriage is not an easy escape from reality and from personal problems. That's what marriage is about. Not an escape. An escape from whom? An escape from my parents. That's not what marriage is about. But rather a way of life that may bring new problems. Marriage may bring new problems that you didn't encounter before. But you got to be aware of that. A mature person entering marriage would enter marriage without understanding. That marriage may bring a new problem or new problems. And that certainly will bring greater responsibility. A greater responsibility, but which also has the potentiality for fulfillment of personal needs and happiness. Yes, it has the potential. Marriage also has the potential, and that's the operative word. Marriage has the potential for fulfillment of personal needs and happiness, but there's no guarantee. There is no guarantee that because you get married, that you're going to be fulfilled and all your needs will be met and you'll be happy. There's no guarantee of that happening, especially if you didn't marry the right person or if you didn't wait until you were mature enough to be married. And so he sees marriage as most rewarding if the total relationship between the two partners is a mutual meeting of personality needs. He can accept also the fact that marriage is not an entirely private matter between two people. No. It's not just about me and my spouse. No. It is an institution. Marriage is an institution designed by a civilized society to protect and make secure the children born into that society and to guarantee the stability and the continuity of the whole social group, the family. The family, you see. The family, that's what the family is about. That's what marriage is about. And so, again, the mature person is able to see marriage for what it is. The mature person. He knows that marriage is not an easy escape. Marriage is not an easy escape from reality and from personal problems. No. Like I said, there are too many people enter marriage because they want to escape something. They're trying to get away from something, thinking that marriage is the panacea. Marriage is the answer to all my problems. But rather, marriage is a way of life that may bring new problems. A mature person would look at marriage that way and understand that about marriage, that marriage may bring new problems, and that certainly will bring greater responsibility. You want to get married? Okay. You want to marry me? Okay. Are you prepared for greater responsibility? You want to take me out of my father's home, you want to take me out of my parents' home. Are you prepared to take the responsibility of taking care of me? Can you take care of me the way they did or better? Hallelujah. And so he sees marriage as most rewarding if the total relationship between the two partners is a mutual meeting of personality needs. It is an institution, like I said. Marriage is an institution designed by a civilized society to protect and to make secure the children born into that society. It ain't about only me no more. It ain't only about my pleasure, my happiness. Now it has to include my children. It has to include our children too. Am I prepared to be responsible for them? Am I prepared to give them all that they need to grow up into responsible citizens in this country, making their contribution to society? Am I prepared to do my part to prepare them to make their contribution to society? And so the person who is mature enough for marriage, get this, the person who is mature enough for marriage is aware of these larger implications of his marriage. He's aware of that, as well as its meaning for his own life. Let's look at maturity for marriage includes. We're talking about maturity for marriage. And we are suggesting strongly this morning that people ought not to enter marriage unless they are mature enough for marriage. Unless they are mature enough to accept and take on the various responsibilities of marriage. And unless a person is ready to take on his or her responsibilities in marriage, they ought not to get married. They ought not to get married. They ought to wait. They ought to wait until they are mature enough to take on the responsibilities of marriage. And so maturity for marriage includes a conception of love based on truth. Maturity for marriage includes a conception of love based on truth. Based on truth. An understanding of the nature of love may develop slowly as one goes through adolescence and early adulthood. The individual may go through a process of experiencing different levels and types of love. Listen to this. Listen to this. He will know a type of love in junior high school and possibly have several loves in high school. Each of these experiences will teach him something about the nature of love. If he gets safely through this part of life, he will probably come to realize that he can love people whom he could not possibly live with in marriage. He will have learned that love must be supported by a broad foundation of common interests, common goals in life, acceptance of each other, and mutual respect, and that love, to grow and become more satisfying in marriage, must be based on a total relationship between two people. The mature person, you're listening, you're hearing that word over and over again, because this morning we are dealing with maturity for marriage. And I felt that this teaching this morning was so important because there are too many people who enter marriage and they're not mature enough for marriage. They're not mature enough for marriage. Not because the person is chronologically of age, of a certain age, means that he or she should marry. They might be old enough, but then they might not be mature enough. They might be old enough, but not mature enough. I read a story, I think it was just last night, on the internet about a young woman who was 30 years old who committed suicide. Another bad-looking girl, young, good-looking girl. She committed suicide at age 30. You know why she committed suicide? Because according to her, at her age, and according to her plan, she should have been married by now. And with children. She was neither married, nor did she have any children at 30, so she committed suicide. She had a boyfriend, but apparently he was not the type to marry. She didn't take him seriously, or maybe he didn't take her seriously. And so she committed suicide. So it has nothing to do with age. That's my point. Get that out of your head. Get it out of your head that you, at a certain age, you must be married. Because at a certain age, you might still be too immature to marry. At a certain age, you might still be not mature enough. You might not be mature enough to deal with the responsibilities of marriage. The mature person sees romantic love as they picture in movies, plays, and fiction for what it is, a form of fantasy that has little relationship to the type of love that can promise happiness in marriage. You cannot pattern your life after Hollywood, the stuff you see on the screen, the stuff you see on television, or even on your cell phone. No, that's only fantasy. That's not reality. You can't pattern your life and your marriage and your love life be after that kind of stuff. The mature person sees romantic love as they pictured in movies, plays, and fiction for what it is. For what it is. A form of fantasy. That's all it is. A form of fantasy that has little relationship to the type of love that can provide happiness in marriage. All they're doing is play acting. That's all they're doing in the movies, on the screen, on television. They are play acting. That's not reality. So you'll be foolish to try and pattern your life after what you see on the screen. You'll be foolish. A philosophy to live by. A philosophy to live by. The mature person is developing a philosophy that will guide him or her through the future. They are developing a philosophy that will guide him or her through the future. He is coming to terms with the universe about him in his moral philosophy, his religious concepts, and in his responses to and his functioning among other people. He has at least a message or a measure of security concerning his philosophy of life, because he is finding that it is workable in that it enables him or her to cope with difficult circumstances or situations in his or her life. He still tests and evaluates his basic attitudes. He tests and evaluates his or her basic attitudes and will continue to do so throughout life if his maturing continues, or if his or her maturing continues. Notice that, pay attention. He or she still tests and evaluates their basic attitudes and will continue to do so. You will continue to evaluate your basic attitudes and will continue to do so throughout life if their maturing continues. So if you're not doing that on a daily basis, it means that you're not maturing. You're not maturing. You're not maturing as a person if you're not doing that. Testing and evaluating your basic attitudes. That is how you mature. When you test and evaluate your basic attitudes. And you got to continue to do that throughout life, testing and evaluating your basic attitudes. Your basic attitudes towards yourself. Your basic attitudes towards others. Your basic attitudes towards the world. You have to continually test and evaluate your attitudes towards those things in order to be considered maturing. And so if you're not adjusting your basic attitudes from day to day, it means that you are not maturing as a person. If you're still dealing with situations, and if you're still dealing with people around you, and if you're still dealing with situations and with problems the same way you did 5-10 years ago, it means that you have not matured. It means that you are not maturing. Are you all with me? You're not maturing. God's sake, you're not maturing. But he has already lived long enough and matured enough to have made the major shifts and reshuffling in his philosophy that are characteristic of adolescence. That are characteristic of adolescence or of the person who is still in the early stages of growing up. And in other words, you're 30, you're 40, you're 50, but you're still at the early stages of growing up. What? You're 30, you're 40, you're 50, you're 60, and you're still at the early stages of growing up? That's serious. That is serious. And what I'm saying is there are too many people who enter into marriage with that mindset. And it's for that reason that their marriages fail. Marriage has it has much more to be concerned about than just money, bringing the money home. You got to be growing too. Yeah, the money is important to pay the bills and to live and to live sensibly, like all the other people in the neighborhood. You don't want to have to be begging for this and begging for the next thing. Yes, the money is important, but at the same time, the person ought to be growing and maturing mentally and attitudinally. How he or she relates to people around him, how he or she relates to each other, how he or she relates to the world around them ought to be growing day by day and changing and adjusting and reshuffling. That's maturity. That is maturity. We ought to be maturing and not stuck in one spot for the rest of our lives. Like a child. Mentally still a child. We got to grow up. We got to grow up. We're looking at maturity for marriage. Maturity for marriage. And I would say to you, don't marry anybody. Don't marry any and every Tom, Dick, or Harry. Don't marry the first Joe Blow who come along. No. You have to consider all these things if you want a happy marriage. At this point, his directions are set. At this point, his directions are set. Even if the exact course is not charted. You're talking about the immature guy, especially, or the immature woman, whoever. You know, their thinking is set. At this point, his directions are set, even if the exact course is not charted. He is thus ready to choose a marriage partner wisely, and the one who chooses him does not have to make a blind choice. If he is maturing. If he is maturing as he goes. If he's making daily adjustments to his personality. If he's making daily adjustments to his attitude. If he's making daily adjustments to his thinking, to his prejudices, and so on and so forth. This is not too heavy for you guys. Listen, I'm trying to break it down and make it as simple as possible for even the children to understand what I'm saying. But a reasonable evaluation of self. Let's look at that. Let's look at that for a moment. A reasonable evaluation of self. And this is healthy. It is healthy. It's healthy to be able to evaluate yourself. To sit down and rationally evaluate yourself. Honestly.
Amen.
Honestly. Look at yourself in that mirror. Like Michael Jackson would say. Look at the man in the mirror and evaluate yourself honestly. The mature person has made a fairly accurate and objective evaluation of himself or herself. He sees his strengths and weaknesses, and he is working to overcome the weaknesses if possible. He and she. They are working to overcome the weaknesses if possible. Just don't accept yourself for who you are. Just don't accept yourself as you are. You can improve yourself.
Amen.
Don't accept yourself as you are. You can improve. You can improve. No matter where you are in life, you could improve. No matter how old you are, you could improve. You could do better if you try. If he has weak points within his personality that he can not change, he accepts them without great sorrow or feelings of guilt. He builds on his strengths and makes the most of himself in terms of what he has to work with. He recognizes that there are some things that he cannot do well. Yes, that might be so. That might be so. There's some things that maybe you can't do well. If at all, that is. But he also knows the things that he can do well. He knows the things that he cannot do well or cannot do at all, but he also knows the things that he can do well. He accepts without great regret his inabilities and limitations and appreciates and uses his assets. And I will add to that in those areas where you're not as proficient as you should be, work at it. Work at it. Don't accept it. Work at it. Work at it. In the context of marriage, of course, as well as outside of marriage. The same thing applies. The same principle applies. Let's look at an evaluation of family background. This is important in marriage, especially. An evaluation of family background. You're talking about you want to get married now, right? You want to get married, you want to tie yourself up with somebody else. You want to bring all that garbage and all that baggage in somebody else's life to marriage. Let's look at that. Let's look at that. An evaluation of family background. And this is important. When you marry somebody, you should get to know something about the person's background. Get to know about their family tree. Get to know about all the demons and all the skeletons in their closets and whatnot. Because you're marrying into that. You're marrying into